think? Can I work in the US? What can I do? What are some options for international students after I graduate? Stuff like that is really one of the events that, or maybe the event that I really look forward to every year. We're not sure if you're going to have one this year, hopefully, because I love to have that again here in America. So those are basically the steps, the services that we provide you. So as you can see, it's very well-rounded. We assist everyone every step of the way, basically. So meet with us again. My name is Hina. Nice to meet you guys. If this is your first time, I will introduce one of my colleagues, Antika, in a minute. But I leave our emails, our direct emails here if you want to just reach out to us directly. Since the pandemic, the good news is Antika and I, we are still doing the advising like just like business as usual, right? So it's just that the difference is we do the one-on-one advising via Zoom now because unfortunately until today, America is still not open for public, just in case you guys are wondering. So everything is conducted via Zoom. So I leave you the Zoom link ID here, and Santika will help me give you the link so that you can save for further use so that it's easier. Right. So the advising hours for us is still basically the same when we were still in America. So we are available every day, basically from 1 until 9 p.m. And the advising session, the advising system that we have, also similar to when we were in America, that is first come first serve basis. So technically, you don't have to make any appointment. You don't need to, hey Fina, can I see you on Friday at 7? Technically, if I'm in Zoom at 7 and there's no one there, and then you come in, I will let you in. But if there is a session already going on, I will give you like a quick chat letting you know that I'm currently on a session and feel free to wait. Okay, because when you come in, you're going to be put in the waiting room. Okay. Or you can email us first if you don't feel like jumping into Zoom and just like see one of us, Santika or myself. You can email us first to our email center, that is jakarta.atamerica@educationusa.org. Feel free if you want to introduce yourself, if you have some questions. Although if the questions are, if you feel that we need to answer that better by talking to you directly, we are going to, invite you to talk to us via Zoom. But if the question is pretty straightforward, if the answer is pretty straightforward, we can, like reply to your email. I would like to give you a glimpse of what we're going to have this month. I've been loving January so far. Yesterday, if you were here, yesterday evening, we had also a discussion, the first discussion of the year with one of my advisees, Tiara, an incoming student to Harvard. So we basically, heard a lot, learned a lot from her. And today, we are having Tita, more senior, because Tita is already an alumni. So we definitely want to really hear like his journey from the very beginning until now, working in the US, and what he has to say about, us fellow Indonesians who wants to really study in the US and stuff. Okay. And so next week, this is definitely my favorite event because it's part of our monthly event. So I basically give this event, this presentation every single month, just because we can't stress it enough how writing essays is really, really important and how it just super different than other countries outside the US, basically. So I'm going to give this presentation next week on January 21st at 6:30 in the evening. And just a quick heads up, you don't want to kind of like start coming in late because from my first few slides of my presentation, it's already quite important. So I feel like, and I'm afraid that if you come in like after I speak for like 5-10 minutes, you kind of like miss the very important information in the beginning. Okay. And then we're going to actually close the month of January with yet another discussion. So it's exciting of this month. So yesterday I featured an incoming student. So she basically has not started studying in the US, but she already received the LOA. She has secured the scholarship. She is basically ready to go, right? Because it's still fresh in her mind about like the application process, that's what we want to hear from her directly, right? Today we are having Tita as an alumni, basically, like going to cover a lot of things. And on January 23rd, we're going to feature one of my advisees, Hans, who just actually arrived in Manhattan. in New York City to start his study, his MBA study at Columbia University just this month, like a couple of weeks ago. So it's still really fresh for Hans to arrive in the US. Although we're also going to hear from Tita today about like the current situation in the US, but we also want to hear from Hans, who last time I talked, he's still looking for housing. So we want to talk. We want to hear from him about like that whole experience. Has he adapted in the US yet? How about like the weather because it's like January and everything. So it's very exciting. So it's going to be on January 23rd, especially if you guys probably planning to apply for an MBA. We're going to hear from Hans because as we know, especially CBS, Columbia Business School, is really hard to get into, and probably like in a year they just received they just have about like two to three Indonesians, and Hans made it through, and so we want to definitely hear from Hans' story as well. And so that's that. If you, I really urge everyone to register for some of this event because it's already available. The information, the Zoom for you to register via Zoom is already available on our website. So you can definitely go to atamerica.or.id/educationusa. We are currently still cooking for the event in February, but you can definitely expect more and more discussion sessions from alumni, incoming students, or current students. So it's very exciting. I really look forward to it. And so that's it. That's basically my introduction presentation. And so I would just like start the event. I would like to say hi to Santika, one of my colleagues here in America. And I would also like to say hi to Tita, who is currently in Silicon Valley, California. Hi, Tita and Santika.
Hi, Fina.
Hello.
Hi.
Thank you
Thank
for
you so
inviting
much.
me.
Thank you banget Tita, udah join ini kedua kalinya ya Tita join di eventnya At Amerika. Terakhir kita tahun berapa? 2018.
Right, that's right. Actually, 2018. It's been a
Dan itu
while.
pun juga Tita masih ada di California.
Wow.
Right, right.
Ya. Tunggu, aku peringat berarti tahun 2018 itu kita baru lulus ya? Maksudnya the year when you graduated, no?
Right, so 2018 was the year when I graduated. Terus kita kayak beberapa bulan setelah graduate kita aku ngasih sharing session di sini juga.
Okay.
And it's great to be back.
Yeah, thank you so much. Really get to have you here. Tita, kita pengen kalau kemarin kita ngomong sama ngobrol sama Tiara, timeline tuh penting banget ya menurut aku dan apalagi kayak aku tuh pengen banget sih denger timeline dari Tita juga. Jadi kayak pengen banget dong denger Tita ini siapa sih gitu, kayak boleh nggak sih sharing ke kita dari awal banget, kalau bisa dari kayak pas kuliah tuh kuliah apa, terus nanti pas mau kepikiran S2 tuh jurusannya apa dan kenapa bisa end up di Stanford. But I'm gonna leave you to kind of like open, kind of like share with us here in Indonesia about yourself so we get to know a little bit better about you.
Right. So before you guys actually start the great conversation, I would like to tell all of you that the good news is I've been in the chat box and talking with one of the participants here in Zoom, and he or she is actually watching from Peru. So that, and as much as we want to use Bahasa Indonesia, I mean, we can use Bahasa Indonesia, but if you are more comfortable to talk in English as well, Tita, feel free to use English. But if you feel like there are some things that you need to share in Bahasa Indonesia, then feel free to do that. And I can feel our participants who are not, Bahasa Indonesia speaking. If you guys need small translations, I can do that if you're in Zoom. But if you're not, feel free to email me, kind of. So that's that. And then, okay, so let's start. Tita.
Sure. Maybe I can start from like the high level of my journey. So in my undergrad, I majored in petroleum engineering. So I did it at ITB, Bandung, Indonesia, Institute of Technology Bandung. And then I graduated in 2012. And then after that, I worked at a multinational oil and gas company in Indonesia for about 4 years. I was working as a petroleum engineer. And then some point in 2015, I was kind of thinking about, do I really want to, stay here for long term? But then, I decided to not do that, and then I did something else instead. So in 2014, 2015, I kind of started applying to different schools, and then eventually in 2016, I got admitted at Stanford. And then I decided to quit an oil and gas industry. And then in 2016, I went to the US here for my master's. And then at Stanford, I majored in energy resources engineering. And feel free to ask a lot more details about it. So it took me 2 years to graduate from my master's. And after I graduated, I worked at a small startup company here based in Silicon Valley in California. And I worked as a data scientist in a company that focuses on AI/renewable energy. And then right, actually starting Monday this week, I moved to a new company. It's an electric vehicles company based in California here in the United States. So I think that's the big picture of my journey, and feel free to jump into every single part of them. And feel free to ask any questions.
Yeah.
Thanks
Tita,
so much, Tita.
so boleh dong denger sedikit kayak uh, because definitely like people want to. One of the things that a lot of us like when it comes to study in the US is the funding, right? So at the time, kayak can you share a little bit about like, okay, I'm gonna apply for the scholarship and that scholarship. Can you share with us?
Yeah, so I started applying around 2014. I started applying to a couple of different schools, not only in the US, actually, not only there, but also some schools in the Europe as well, like TU Delft, and then also um, IFB, and then also I applied to Stavanger and Imperial College as well. For US schools, I applied to UT Austin, Colorado School of Mines, and also Stanford University. Um, you know, I got a lot of rejections, not only from schools but also scholarships. I applied to LPDP, I got rejected twice. I applied to Fulbright, I also got rejected. And then what else?
Did you try Fulbright?
Sorry.
Did you try Fulbright?
I did. I tried Fulbright. I didn't get in. I tried Chevening for Imperial College because that's in the UK, right? It was failed. And then EducationUSA in Netherlands, I was not admitted at that time. So there were lots of failures at the time. So I was like having this feeling where maybe graduate study was not for me. But then I tried out, a couple more iterations, couple more trial and errors, and then eventually I got in. So Stanford was actually, I never thought about getting to Stanford because I always thought of it as a jackpot, as a bonus, whatever that is. But it was not my main target at that time. So Stanford was like, oh, okay, if I got in Stanford, then that's fine. But if not, then life goes on, right? Yeah, so my target universities are actually Colorado School of Mines and also UT Austin, which was interesting. I got rejected from UT Austin, so I was like applying to it, and then at some point, they sent me out the rejection letter. For Colorado School of Mines, I kind of got admitted, but then they didn't provide any financial support, and they eventually, because I could not provide them the external funding at the deadline, so they decided to not move forward with the applications. But then good news is that Stanford gave me an admission letter, which was super surprising. I remember it was like 4 a.m. in the morning, and then um, I was super surprised, and I thought it was like a dream because it was like I was just waking. I just woke up in the morning, and then there was this email from Stanford, and that was probably one of the happiest days ever in my life.
Wow, that's amazing. I'm looking kind of like in the chat, and it's really exciting. We have Meliana Ulfa. Before we started the event, we had like a quick briefing with Tita. I connected. Did I connect you two, or did you guys like know each other before? But I forgot. Like, but I remember that Tita also knows Meliana Ulfa or Melly. So Melly, by the way, is one of my advisees who is currently studying at UT Austin. But then I also see Hari Baytana, also one of my advisees, an alumni at Texas A&M. So it's really exciting because today is kind of like people who are in the Western hemisphere of the US. I have like a note here with me, Tita, because you mentioned that like initially like you wanted to apply to Stanford, UT Austin, and CSM. So my question is maybe for people who wants to, can I say that you are in the oil and gas industry, or can I say that?
Right. Yeah, I was working in oil and gas for 4 years right
Can
after
we can
my
we can
undergrad.
we say that if you want to kind of study in this field, it's better to stay in the West Coast, or do you know any other campuses in the East Coast that also provide the program? And it's really interesting because here in Education USA at America, the majority of people that we assisted are, you know, like the majority of them are planning to study like masters and or PhD, but then all of them are kind of like do it in the East Coast. But yeah, can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think
What
I know. Right, I know what, some programs in the East Coast. I think one of them is Penn State University. So that's quite popular for petroleum engineering. I'm not sure about other schools that are, very popular. I know like a lot of different schools are most like that are related to oil and gas, or they are mostly in the South, like Texas, and also Oklahoma, and also a couple of different schools in California as well.
Okay, all right. So I will to check with Santika. Santika, do you have some questions?
Hey, so yeah, we do have a few questions by now. So we got very interesting question, and I think we need to dig into this one. So Nicole, the one who's watching from Peru, actually asked, "Hi, what did you get? What did you do to get that opportunity? I mean, all of the documents you have to present and the process you had to pass for." So she's asking for like your opportunity to Stanford, because it says because you said you got the teaching or research assistantship, and a lot of us here must be curious on what did you do, because you mentioned you had so many failures, which is very important that you didn't give up on it, but you still going to try for Stanford. So we are so curious, like how did you end up knowing the assistantship program, and what did you do differently, and what do you think, what you see in Stanford, and what do you think Stanford see from you that makes you got accepted?
Sure. Yeah, I think there are a couple of questions here. So the first one is all the documents needed, right?
Yep.
And then secondly,
Mm-hmm.
how do I get the research assistantship opportunity? And then also, I don't remember the third one, but we'll address it later. So the first one is all the documents that are needed. So it's pretty standard. It's not different like any other schools, like things like standardized tests like GRE, and also TOEFL.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and also there are also recommendation letters as well that are required. So typically two or three, depending on the schools. But you always have to check on each department, um, um, making sure what the requirements are. And then there's also a motivation letter, which is super important as well. So you make an essay, usually 1 page or 2 page, and you have to answer the questions that they ask. So usually they publish it on their website. They have like a list of questions that you have to include on your, statement of purpose or your essay. So that's that. How did I get the research assistantship opportunity? So when I was working at a multinational oil company, so I was working on a specific like field, and then I read one paper that was written by a professor at Stanford and also his student. So I was super curious about it, and that paper was so much related to what I was working on at the company. And so I was sending an email asking a lot of questions. I also, I also said like, thank you for like, researching this stuff, because that research was pretty much like rare, I would say. And I was saying something that appreciate the professor. And then so we went back and forth. Actually, I asked questions and then he answered, and then eventually I was showing an interest to join his research group at Stanford. So at that time he was saying something like, yeah, sure, I think you have like, you have like the capabilities that we're looking for, and so
Mhm.
you can just apply, and then he said that I will be the admission committee at that time, so I will be looking at your application. And so yeah, so that's that. And then after I submitted my applications, I had to wait like for like a couple of months, and then eventually I got an admission letter. And then I was actually admitted without any funding support at all, right? So I had to find out like a way to fund my study from external funding, right? And there was a long story. There's a separate story about it, but I'll explain it later. But long story short, after that, so I talked to the professor, and then I let him know that I was not able to secure external funding. So I failed scholarship. I mentioned that before, like LPDP, Fulbright, and so on and so forth. And then I was asking if there is an opportunity from Stanford where I can get funded. And then he said that, wait a second. So I can check with the department and see if they have like any uh, funding left, because they have like, this budget for like graduate students. And then it turns out that there's like one slot that was not used at that time, and then he was giving it to me actually. So that's where I got that funding opportunity. But then, as a requirement of that funding, I had obligation to do research. I had to work as a research assistant for that particular research group that he was advising at that time. So yeah, so that's a story. So I work as a research assistant. I work 20 hours a week, and that's how I pay the tuition fee. So, and also that's how I get the money from to live.
Tita,
Right.
actually,
So,
actually
oh
have
yeah,
quite
Fina, go ahead. Go
real,
ahead.
yeah, real question following to what you said. So you were chosen to be a research assistant. Is it under this specific professor that you had in contact with?
Right, that's right. Yeah. So
Okay.
my professor, he's a leader of a research group, and then he has this research group consisting of some PhD students, some master students. And it's common that actually at Stanford, at that particular department where students get funding, even not only PhD students, but also master students as well.
Mhm. Mhm. Have you talked to this professor even before you apply, or once you got accepted, you just find out that, oh, okay, I need to find about the funding, and then you just happen to contact this professor?
Right. So that's actually the professor that I reached out earlier. Right.
Okay.
So
Mm,
when I was working
yeah.
as an engineer, so I kind of talked to him like back and
So I
forth.
think I think the key takeaway that we can take from this is that, because this is also something that we also encourage our advisees, right, Santika,
Yes.
to kind
Very
of
much.
build some kind of relationship with either the admissions committee, or if we can actually, build some kind of relationship with the professors, that's even better. Can you agree on that, Tita? Would you like say that to people who are, about to apply?
Absolutely. It doesn't hurt if we want to send an email saying that we're interested in enrolling in the program, or even better, you're interested in doing his or her research, and you want to participate as a researcher in his or her research group. So I think if you're really interested, do it.
Yeah, amazing. Okay, Santika, you're about to say something.
Yeah, I was about to say the same thing as what you just said, Fina. That's the importance of you reaching out to, if you're looking forward to work with certain professor, regardless of if you're you're applying for master or PhD, because we encourage this even more to people who wants to apply for the PhD. But for master, this is a good example that you can also do the same thing, right, Tita?
Right. There is a caveat though
I
that
Yeah.
I know, like people like,
Hmm.
oh, I'm not saying that just send
Yeah.
emails to professors, but also keep in mind that um, professors, they get a lot of emails from like prospective students, and
Very much.
they
Yeah. Yeah.
get a generic kind of email like, hey, I'm interested in your projects, blah blah blah, and so on
Uh
and so
huh.
forth. So they receive that kind of email, and they usually ignore it. You have to make your email
Exactly.
very personal, and then you
Mm.
have to either ask questions or not only say show your interest to them, but also
Exactly.
you know make a comment about his or her research, and then do some intellectual discussion, and then more importantly, you have to do your own research before contacting the
Right.
professor.
Mm-hmm.
I love your tips, Tita. I
Yeah.
mean, we really want our advisee to do that. I mean, every time, I mean, even we are not the professors, but when we receive emails from our advisees, you know, introducing themselves and everything, sometimes it can get like template, my name is, my age is, and all of that thing. We want to get out of the box and make the professor pay attention to you, right? By being
Right.
personal. Yeah.
And now
Absolutely.
everyone
Okay.
is like really, anyone is actually really intrigued in the chat, like wanting to know more about like this scholarship. And I'm actually also want to hear from Tita. Tita, how exactly the funding scheme works? So you said that this one professor told you that, oh yeah, okay, we have funding. And then you said that it's going to be kind of like in a form where you had to work as a research assistantship. So how
Right.
does that work? So does that mean that they are waiving your tuition so that you pay $0 for your tuition, or how does that work?
Yeah, exactly. So it covers two things. So the first is tuition waiver, so 100%, and then also stipend. So stipend is like salary, if you think about it.
But they don't
So
really want to call it salary, do they?
right, so they call it stipend. That's
Stipend,
that's
yeah,
usually
like
how they call it.
allowance in a way.
Exactly, right. And for like tuition fee, Stanford is a private university, and you know that the tuition fee is super, super expensive, exorbitant. It's crazy. It's like 50K US dollar per year, right? That even that's for engineering. If you take like MBA, that's even more expensive. It's probably 70K or 80K or something like that, right? So getting a waiver on a tuition fee, that is super, super helpful, because you don't have to pay like 50K a year, and if you do a master, you have to do it like 2 years. You can save like 100K US dollar per month. So 100 grand, that's a huge amount of money. And salary. California is popular for its living costs. It's super expensive compared to other states. So, but that stipend actually covers the living cost and also basically all we need to live, right? So, for my case, I received I think 3,300 bucks per month, and that is more than enough to live actually. So in case you're wondering, so if you want to rent an apartment in California, you probably have to pay like 800 to like probably 1,500 bucks a month for that. If you want to for like food and things like that, other things, that's probably 800 to 1,200. So it's more than enough. It leaves you room to even save the money for some other things.
Wow, that's really interesting. Do you know maybe some of your friends, or maybe even like some people from outside Indonesia who happen to kind of like international students, who is it, do you think it's common for us international students to receive this kind of funding that we call like through the GRA position or the graduate research assistantship?
Yeah, it depends. I was kind of lucky actually, because I was admitted at this small department, and that department was, heavily funded by a lot of energy companies. So, small people, like, not many people in the department, and then there's this huge funding from the company. So, that helps us. It helps the department make sure that everyone gets funded, or at least not everyone, but those who are in need. So that's the good thing. And I'm not saying that that is always the case for other programs. So I know other programs, even at Stanford, like for example, electrical engineering, and also I think civil engineering as well. So they are big departments. There are like 600 people in the department. Like they admit like hundreds of people every year, and the funding for master students is not always available. So yeah, so you have to keep in mind. So do your research about the program that you want to apply for, and then make sure you know the situation, the funding situation, like how many percentage of
to you in terms of you don't have to pay the tuition fee and you get stipend. And there's another
Oh,
question here that's quite interesting. I think, Fina, can you hear
mhm.
us?
Tess, can
Are you
you
back?
hear me? Am I back?
Yeah, you're
Yeah,
back.
yeah, I can hear
Ah,
you.
there you
Yeah.
are.
Yeah, you're
Okay.
back.
Yeah, no, sorry. Just real quick, Tita, if you don't mind to repeat again, the stipend that you received in a month, because I think there are a couple of people kind of like want to make sure that, am I hearing this right?
Yeah,
Yeah. So it's
3,300.
about 3,200, 3,300, something like that per month.
So that's 2,200 and 3,300 ish, right?
3,300. Yeah.
Yeah.
3,300.
Yeah, okay. So yeah,
Gampang ya, 3.300.
yeah. Okay, so Rusdi, there you go. Rusdi, you got your answer. And actually, talking about Rusdi, he also have other questions that I think is quite interesting.
Mhm.
And I think we can go there as we kind of talk about your funding already. So this is about the minimum score for GRE and IELTS for Stanford.
Mhm.
Um, I want to tell all of you guys, not only Rusdi here, that minimum requirement for like GRE is not as openly stated as IELTS or TOEFL IBT or other English standardized tests, because GRE and GMAT sometimes can be optional to the department and to the department that you are major applying for. So what you want to write, but if you cannot find the minimum GRE or GMAT, then you probably want to email them, email the admission office to ask. But even if you find the details on the website, like what we have mentioned last night, Yafina, yeah, they usually only give you like the range or like the
Average
approximate
from previous year.
number, yeah, like the score that the students they got accepted, kayak kira-kira berapa gitu. They don't like minimum of this much GRE score for quant and then verbal. They don't do that, so you have to kind of find out on your own. But since we have Tita here,
Yeah.
we would love to hear about your journey on GRE. Is it challenging for you? Is it like did you struggle a lot there, or how do you study it? Because this is also one of the question from Bruce Lee. Like, do you mind sharing your score if you still remember? And then any book or preference or courses, how you study it. There you
Sure.
go.
I'll try my best to remember like my scores because it's been a while. It's been like 6 years ago.
Exactly.
But yeah, and the way I prepare it is just practice. I mean, I think GRE is not a measure, not only a measure of intelligence, it's also a measure of persistence as well. Because you can always retake GRE, right? You can always take it like 3, 4 times, whatever, right? I know it's expensive, but if you think that GRE cost is expensive, think about the possible outcome after you graduate. It's not about just money, right? It's because you pay that for like your experience, and then there's also a lot of benefit associated with it when you take a graduate study. So anyway, going back to the GRE stuff, how did I prepare that? So practice, like I said. I used to work at a company, and then they assigned me to a remote area because I was all in oil and gas company. So I was in this remote area in Borneo, and then the typical shift is like 6 to 6. So I was assigned that. I was not like working there for like long period of time, but I was assigned there for like 3 months, um, like period, and then so I was there for like 2 weeks. And then 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off, 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off, and so on and so forth. So that's how it works usually in oil and gas. So when I was there on the side, so I didn't have like a lot of time to study, but then I tried to kind of squeeze it in my schedule. So right after work, like after 6 p.m. So I just prepare myself by doing a lot of practice. Like, and I use Magush. I know if that's
Oh yeah.
I'm not sure if that's the best like platform that you can use, but I find it very useful because I found that the Magush has very much similar difficulty compared to the actual
Mm.
GRE. And I also tried out a couple of different things like Princeton, and I don't remember what the name of the book is, but the one that I think is the best for me was like Magush because it's close to the real or the actual test. It was not free though, and I'm not speaking in on behalf of Magush. I'm not in a way like promoting their company and so on. But that's my
Yeah.
personal opinion.
No, yeah, we actually don't do that as well, but we gave a lot of our advisors some options, and one of them is also definitely Magush. So I don't know how people are familiar with Magush here in Jakarta, but at least with our advisors here in at America, I think from word of mouth, we heard from them that they also use Magush, and we have like a couple of people in the chat that kind of like say yes when you say Magush. They say it's very helpful. And you can some people kind of like told me that they started with the free one, and because they really see how good Magush is, that they willing to pay for that one as well.
Right.
Yeah. So I've been looking at the questions, and the questions are just so amazing. I mean, it's long, and I asked Santika for help for that, to kind of like make it compact so that we can easier for you, Tita, to answer it. But do we have
Hmm.
Santika? Because it seems that Santika is for breaking up or freezing. But okay, I think I do have questions. So I really like when you said, Tita, that like the GRE is not like how people can actually really know you're intelligent and everything. And we actually see more and more universities in the US, kind of not just because of the pandemic, but even before the pandemic. I read this one article where Yale University, for example, they actually decide to waive GRE on a number of their departments. Not this is before pandemic, right? So now with the pandemic, there are actually more and more universities for the following term waive the GRE, which I say to a lot of people here in Indonesia, this is like your chance, like this is nice because everyone, don't like taking GRE.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
but but you happen to submit GRE because Stanford asked for it. But do
Right.
you think Stanford really pay attention to the score? Because it seems that here in Indonesia or maybe elsewhere, I would say, kita tuh apa ya terlalu terpaku banget sama nilai ya nggak sih kayak
Right.
banyak banget iya kayak banyak banget advisor tuh yang datang gitu kan ke aku, and then I never ask about their GPA, and then mereka yang selalu kayak share gitu kan kayak aku sebenarnya sih pengen apply ke sekolah ini tapi my GPA is like very low, and I said like how low, biasanya ada yang kayak 3,0 3,1, and I told them that hey, I actually had some advisees yang 3,1 bisa nembus ke Harvard. And they were like, really? And I said, yeah, really. I know, right? Like, I also found this really interesting because I think, like, in the US, and this is like a really important keyword that I would like to share with everyone, and I'm pretty sure Tita also agrees. The way the universities review the application is by holistically, right? And they're not just looking at, I mean, yes, they're going to take a look at your transcripts and everything, but it's not like if you have like 3.1 and then they're going to disqualify you, right? But they want to take a look at basically like everything, like your resume, your past working experience, and your essay as well, and everything. So yeah, back to the question, Tita, do you think Stanford kind of like pay attention to like this GRE score?
Yeah, I actually agree to everything what you said. It's holistic. It's not just they look at GRE. If the GRE doesn't is lower than some sort of threshold, you don't get admitted. I've never heard something like that, honestly. And I've never hit. I talked to like the Nation committee, and I don't think they have that kind of like threshold where they kind of weed out the candidates. I'm not sure, but you know, um, but GRE is not everything. Look, I have this. My personal experience is that I know a friend who's got like a perfect GRE score, 174 quantitative, and he was not admitted at Stanford. I got lower than that. I got like I think 167 or something, and I got admitted. So it's not the end of the world if you get like I don't know, I get 164, but the average is 167. But what they put on their website, you have to be very careful. Sometimes they show you the mean or the average of the GRE, but you don't know what the standard deviation is. You don't know how spread out the number is. Maybe there are some people who got like 162. Who knows, right?
Mhm.
And yeah, it's not everything. It's just a part of your application to assess your quantitative skills
Mhm.
and also verbal skills as well.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Tita. It's really aligned with how we basically also tell our advisees here when it comes to GRE. Because like in like always, like one of the persons who asked this question, siapa tadi namanya Santika yang nanya tentang kayak skor GRE. It's actually not like the first one that we received this kind of question, but everyone like nggak nemuin skor jari jadi kayak nggak tahu nih harus kayak skornya berapa gitu kan. But then that's like how we answer it ya Santika, because again like the way I look at it kayaknya memang karena si universitas di US tuh kayak mereka they are asking for GRE but it's not like everything for them. They just kind of like probably just want to know like how good your quantitative skills, your verbal everything. But that's not like the only thing that they're looking at. Probably that's why, or maybe I'm quite convinced that's one of why they don't actually really put the score in there.
Exactly. But if you like, but if you Google it, like how much GRE score you need to go to like Stanford or other highly selective schools, that's how we usually call it. We don't call it Ivy Leagues here. You will get a very high score there, like 90th percentile or 95th percentile range. Okay. So, like what Tita said, you just need to practice more and retake if you don't reach your target. Okay. That's the only way to. I think it's one of the most effective ways to ace any standardized test, not only GRE, like other tests as well, like TOEFL or Ielts, if you're struggling there as well. And we had resources in the past. We did this prep course for 12 sessions. I also mentioned this last night, and a lot of people already emailed me to get that because it's free, and we would love to share it if you want to go to United States to study. So you can email me. I will leave my email in the chat box. And before we close this event, I will also verbally say it just so that people who are watching from all other platforms can also email me. Okay. So yeah, Vina, we will move on.
Like, I'm loving the questions. It's very technical. Like
exactly.
A long type of questions. I love it, and we're actually really glad to have Tita here to answer all of this question. Which one should we go? Maybe let's talk about like dari Muats nih ya Santika tentang kayak
yes.
Tita, could you please?
How do you get?
Tita, could you please share to us what are the steps taken to lay jobs in the US? And maybe I will talk a little bit about that. Karena tadi in some of the chats ada yang mention kayak maybe kind of like jealous because he got to work in the US and this person wanted to apply for LPDP, and with LPDP you're technically need to come back home. And then I kind of like shared also a little bit that yes, LPDP because it's it's been covered by the Indonesian government. Of course, they want you to kind of like come back and contribute to the country. But the good news about the fact that in the US we have like what we call OPT or optional practical training. And in the past, I actually have a number of my advisees who graduated in the US. Well, of course, in the US, I'm with EducationUSA, but they are with LPDP and they are allowed to do OPT. So just as long as you discuss that to the LPDP committee back in Indonesia, telling them that, hey, I would like to do OPT. Because the thing with OPT, I think back in the days, LPDP kind of like sees it as a like working under like a working visa, but OPT is still actually under the student visa. So technically you are still, legally and eligible to do that. Jadi kayaknya sekarang LPDP mulai mengerti OPT ini apa, dan banyak banget advice-ku terlebih kemarin yang MBA, because for an MBA students, it's their chance of getting experience working in the US is actually quite high. And the majority of my advisors who graduated in an MBA program, they land a job in the US and they come back to Indonesia over the summer. They went to the LPDP office and then they ibaratnya kayak minta izin, and all of them granted. So now they are like in the US. I don't know, maybe they are already back now. But intinya dibolehin kok. Jadi kayak nggak perlu takut apply for LPDP knowing that you won't have like any working experience in the US. Maybe not for long because of course Indonesia still needs you in a way, but at least you get the experience, right? So ini Muat. So back to the question from Muat, Tita, dia basically nanya, could you please share to us what are the steps taken to lay jobs in the US? Because as an F1 student holder, we don't have much access to secure particular job. So can you share with us, Tita, did you do OPT? I think you did OPT too, right? Can you talk
I did
kayak
OPT.
ini timeline-nya juga nih, menarik juga sih menurut aku. Jadi kayak abis graduate, like did you already secure the job before you graduate or gimana?
Sure. I'll probably start with timeline. So um, before I graduated, I actually applied to a couple of different companies here in the States. And at that time I was thinking that because I had experience in oil and gas for like 4 years, I wanted it's probably easier for me to get another job in oil and gas as well. But turns out it wasn't the case actually. So I applied to many different oil companies, and you know, knowing that I'm an international student, I was getting a lot of like rejection. But there are actually a lot of companies here in Silicon Valley that are actually open to hiring, students that just graduated from the university, even international students. So they will sponsor you the H1B. Maybe before going there, so how do I get the OPT first, right? So after I right before I graduated, so I was still torn between continuing to a PhD program or work in the industry. And then I talked to my advisor. So I was kind of like 50-50. So what should I do? Should I stay? Should I, just work here in the United States? And then it was like, it's okay if you're confused, if you're not sure about it yet, you can take a leave of absence for 2 years maximum at Stanford, and that's actually a normal thing at Stanford. So it's common where students build their own startups, and then they don't want to waste their opportunity at Stanford at the same time. So they just take a leave of absence, and then uh, building their startups. When they fail, they just go back to Stanford to continue their study. So it's super common at Stanford. It's primarily driven by the Silicon Valley culture because Stanford is part of Silicon Valley, right?
Hmm.
And then so I actually did it. So I took a leave of absence for like 2 years. So between 2018, after I graduated till 2020, I was on a leave of absence as a PhD student at Stanford. But after graduation, I was actually interning at a small company in Houston. It's a very small startup company. It was like a company of like, I don't know, probably 6 people. And they are kind of spread out across the US. And they were like 3 people at the office at that time. So it was a small startup. And then nearing the ending of my internship period, I was still actually in doubt. And then, so I was at the same time interviewing with some companies for full-time positions. And I was also still in contact with my professor, just in case I wanted to go back to PhD program. And then I got an interview from one of the companies in Silicon Valley. So it's a company that focuses on renewable energy companies. So they built an AI system like machine learning, deep learning for renewable energy application. And renewable energy is not something that I'm super familiar with. I know that I took like energy resources engineering where I learned about renewable energy as well, but I didn't have like a real industry experience in renewable energy. But thankfully they gave me a chance, and that was a good thing. That was like the beginning of my journey in a completely new industry. Not completely new, but like different industry. And so yeah, that's how I got a job at the startup company, and I worked there for 2 years. And then they even sponsored me for H1B visa. So I was on OPD in my first year, and then in my second year they sponsored me H1B visa. And then right now I'm still on my H1B visa.
Mm-hmm. Although
Right.
technically, Tita, correct me if I'm wrong. Even though they didn't sponsor you on your second year, because I believe you are under STEM, which is science,
Right.
technology, engineering, and math, you can actually extend your OPT to another 2 years, right?
Right. There was actually a little window. So in the first years, I used OPD, and then right after that, there's like a window where I was on the OPD stamp at the time,
Mm.
and then like just a couple of months after that, I was converted to H1B. So just so you know, like in the US, typically 1 year after graduation, they allow you to work for 1 year on an OPD visa.
Yeah.
But if you're in STEM, science, technology, engineering, and maths, you're allowed to extend your OPD. So you're essentially allowed to work in the United States for 3 years in total after graduation
Mm.
if you have STEM, if you are
Mhm.
on STEM degree. So
Yeah,
yeah.
and thanks to President Obama for that. I remember when he made this a new regulation, new extension for OPT specifically for STEM. That's the kind of like saying that, especially like in the US, they really look for STEM people, and where can they get that better than people outside the US. So like Tita, definitely, or like other fellow Indonesians who are planning to
Yeah.
study STEM in the US. So if you're like planning to apply for science programs, definitely like look for the US. And so
But
with the H1B, Tita, is this something that you ask the company or the company kind of like offered it to you?
For my case, I was the one who asked the company for to sponsor my H-1B visa. But there are some cases in other company where if you don't apply, they'll automatically, not automatically, but they'll offer you whether you if you want to you know transfer to like H-1B visa or not.
Mm-hmm.
so
And
yeah,
yeah,
thank you so much,
go ahead.
Tita, for sharing that. Oh yeah, go ahead. No, I was just saying thank you for sharing that. That's very
Oh,
important.
okay. Yeah. So there's another question about like working in the US. And I got this questions a lot from people yang kayak udah kepikiran pengen deh kayak if I get like a chance to work in the US. Tapi ada juga yang bilang emang company-company pada mau ya kayak nge-hire international students, knowing that with the visa kayak mereka maksudnya nggak segampang itu bisa ngedapetin working visa and stuff like that. What do you have to say to that, Tita?
Um, I mean, it depends on what kind of industry. In oil and gas, it was kind of hard to get, the visa. They're kind of reluctant for some reason. I don't know why. Honestly, they're kind of reluctant to hire like international students. But in Silicon Valley, most of like tech companies, they're very much open to sponsoring visas for like you know um, people who are not from who are not originally from the U.S. or non-U.S. citizen or non-U.S. non-green card holder. Sorry.
Right. Okay. Thank you for sharing that, Tita. Santika, where should we go for the next question? It's been
So
like
yeah, I think we covered the work experience, and then scholarship or research assistantship. I mean, we pretty much cover a lot of things already, and we only have, let's see, less than 30 minutes. So I'm just going to the questions that I think most interest that we haven't talked about much. So this one is about from Slamet. I think this is a good question. Could you please elaborate more on the way you contacted the professor and showed your high interest on the research? I mean, how you express our study interest to the professor without looking impolite on our end. So you said it's, you make something different, not like template that they receive on daily basis. It's boring, then you'll just skip it or didn't reply at all. You said
Right.
it's making it personal, right? So give any tips in that area. I think that will help our audience to kind of like, okay, this is how I'm going to do it right, approaching the professor.
Okay, so it was
especially
just
like
so
professor
happened to
in the
be
US.
right. Yeah, it was just so
Yes.
happened to me that I was working at a certain project that is related to what that professor is
Mhm.
working on. So I can kind of relate. So I started off by talking about, this is what I'm working on, and I think your research is really interesting, and it's very much related to what I was working on at that time. So I started with that kind of conversation. It was a bit technical. There were like a couple of emails, going back and forth between him, and then eventually, I started off like, sharing or how do I start it? I actually, you know, after a couple of different couple of different emails exchanged, I say to him that, hey, actually I'm interested in applying to the program and be part of your research group, and I'm actually really interested in this particular research that you also worked on with your student in the past. So starting from there, I try to build connections with this professor that I've been in contact with.
Right, right. So it has to be related to, you have to be able to relate first on what they are doing, right? To make it
Right,
personal.
and just adding something. I know that is probably not common. Just in
Mm-hmm.
case if you think you don't have a lot of things in common, make sure that you do your own homework before contacting
Okay.
professor. At least you read his or her research, and then you know try to find some things that you're interested in, and then maybe take notes about the things that may be relevant to you, or um, you want to work on it in the future with the professor, and so on and so forth. So you probably can start from there, and start with the start a discussion with more of like research, maybe not directly show off that, oh hey, I want to be a student here at Stanford or what university. So that's probably a bit too straightforward. So yeah.
Yeah,
So
maybe if I
yeah,
can,
I like. Yeah, Fina, go ahead.
yeah, if I can share a little bit about like contacting professors, because this is also something that we urge
Please.
our advisees to do. Um, and I have like a number of stories. Well, technically, kayak following to what Tita said, kind of like earlier during the event when Tita said that remember that this professor is like super busy, they're receiving like a lot of emails and everything. Gimana caranya? Basically kita emailin beliau yang kayak kalau aku selalu bilang gini, give them a reason to reply to your email. Because sometimes we just say, I'm really interested in your research, blah, blah, blah. I'm applying to your campus. And then if you think about it, if you put to be someone and can receive that email, and then they will be asking like, so what, okay, good to know. Like, what do you want me to do? Kind of like that, right? For the professor. And we don't want that. We want to kind of like, oh, this is definitely an email that I need to answer. So how you can make that, it's kind of like a whole different story. Maybe like almost like a kayak nulis essay lagi mungkin gitu kan. And I actually have a lot of advisees in the past yang aku juga selalu bilang kayak don't expect too much when we are contacting the professors because each professors are different, right? There are professors yang emang super duper busy banget yang ketika kita email balasannya masih bagus dibalas gitu loh, tapi balasannya tuh yang kayak good luck, atau ada juga yang kayak nggak balas sama sekali. And then a lot of advices yang kayak aku dapat yang dia nggak balas, profesor langsung take it like personally, like I don't think like I'm gonna like I'm deserve to be in that university or something like that. And I said no, that's just because probably the professor is just busy.
So busy, exactly.
Ya, ada juga yang kok emailnya nggak dibalas ya. And then aku bilang kayak, do you mind sharing with me what you said in the email? Ternyata pas aku baca itu kayak
so long.
And then kayak to the point yang aku kayak I don't know what you are really expect the professor to say. So we hear, I mean, aku sometimes kayak case by case okay, I would say okay to people yang hey Vina, do you mind like reading my email before I hit send? And I don't mind kind of like giving them like a feedback. And then when I read the email, I will put myself as a like professor in a way, kind of like with an email that I would want to reply or not.
I love that about you.
Yeah, aku tipsnya selalu yang kayak give them a reason to reply to your email. And
exactly.
Good stories. Kayak just a couple of weeks ago, kayak one of my advisees wanting to apply to Harvard, and then she said, I really like there's this one senior professor yang kayak super duper terkenal di departemen HKS yang kayak that's kind of like one of the reasons she wants to apply. And then I was like no brainer. I asked her, have you ever contacted the professor? And she said, of course no, because he's like a really important person. Like nggak berani untuk emailin beliau and everything. I said you should give a try. And then I have to convince her a couple of advising sessions until she said, you know what, I think I'm going to give it a try. And then she actually did contact the professor. Jadi profesornya kata itu public figure banget. And then the professor, guess what? The professor actually replied to the email, and she just couldn't believe. And she said, oh my God, I'm going to save this email forever and stuff like that. And then the feedback is actually really good. I mean, the professor didn't really say anything much, but just the fact that the professor replied and then, say good things and, say good, good luck with your, application process and everything. That's already like good to begin with, right? So
exactly.
Absolutely.
So to add to Fina's a great story and Tita's success story in approaching professors, I also have one advisee who happened to approach one of the professor in Stanford as well. If I remember correctly, but it's a different department than Tita's. This one is about like statistics related, and she's currently working in the same. It's in the related field, right? So she wants to take this PhD, and I told her, you know what, contact the professor. Like, tell him if, like what Tita said, like, okay, I'm doing this, I'm working at this, and I look at your research or what you're doing right now, it's so relatable to what I want to do later on, if I got accepted through your program, and I wish to work with you and everything like that. And then this professor is very interesting that he respond in such a positive manner that he told her to improve her qualifications, like, oh, I see that you didn't have this much quantitative courses before in your undergrad, so you want to take this kind of courses, to the intermediate, or like the more in-depth statistics and mathematics, so that you can increase your chance to be accepted. And then after you take the courses, go ahead and apply for the program. He actually gave that valuable direction to the advisee who just tried to connect to him, and that, I think the professor kind of want her to be there, so that's why he kind of do that. So if they reply to you in such a positive manner, do work on it really hard, and make sure that you know what they're trying to say to you. You don't want to reply to them but not answering their questions or whatever. So that's that. If you guys are like afraid to contact the professors, please don't. But just know beforehand, before you contact them, you need to do your homework, like what Tita said, and what we always said, Yafina, yeah. Dig deeper, like what they're doing, what's their interest, is it related to you or not, and whatever. So yeah, before you do that, you need to know first. And I think this is also one of the related questions from Safira. I'll just ask real quick to Tita. Did you do any scientific research, public papers, or anything before you got accepted to the graduate research assistantship? Do you, if you do, like, do some research paper and publish publications and journals, do you think it's a plus point that allows you to be accepted to that program?
Definitely, that is a plus point for
Okay.
masters, or even like PhD. That's even more important, right? Because it
Mm-hmm.
shows that you've done research before, and then especially if your paper or your study was like published in a very prestigious institution or journal, then that'll be like a really
Mm-hmm.
big plus. For masters, yes, especially if the master program is very much research oriented, like mine. So yeah, definitely that's a big plus.
Okay. Cool. So, Tita, before I forget, because I think this is very important, a lot of Indonesians, or people from countries yang lebih konservatif, they
Mm-hmm.
tend to be kayak malu-malu ya pas email gitu, kayak they're being shy and everything.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, it's not like your first email have to have this tons of attachment, like, professor, this is my research, this is my publications, this is my CV, resume, blah blah blah. You don't want to overwhelm the professors in your first email. Am I right?
Right. Yeah.
So did
Absolutely.
you attach anything? Did you attach anything in your first email? No.
No. We were purely talking about technical things, the things that
Cool.
he was researching in, and then I was working on.
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah. The way
Yeah.
I look
Yeah.
at
I don't.
yeah, the way
I don't
I look
recommend
at
that either.
contacting professors
Mm-hmm.
like that is pretty similar if for people who want to study PhD, because sometimes like in the US, like it's very common that if you want to apply for a PhD program, you would, like make a connection with the professors, right? So this is kind of like
Very
pretty
much.
similar, or maybe it is similar, but like on a master's degree level. The way I look at it, if it's like in the STEM field, especially where the department is not like as large as, let's say, MBA or public policy, it's very common. And there's some possibilities that you would be able, or maybe I would say kind of easier for us to build this kind of like relationship with the faculty members. If you're into like MBA or public policy, it's like a very rame banget programnya ya. We're talking about like
Yeah.
maybe it accepts like 100 people in one admission cycle or something like that. So it's almost impossible. Like if you email someone and ask for like hey, let's work together. I'm into your research or everything, anything like that. But is it possible? Yeah, no, absolutely. Like the one that I mentioned, one of my advices to HKS, the Harvard Kennedy School. The professor must be like super busy, but then he still made the time to reply to it.
Yeah, so I think it aligned with our recommendations to our advices. I just want to double check that because you are one of the success stories that I can learn from, right? So don't overwhelm the professors by attaching a lot of stuff in your first email, especially because if they don't have interest in you in the beginning, they wouldn't open that CV or whatever that you attach, okay? So, last question for today because time flies. We only have less than 15 minutes. Pina, Tita. I wish we
Mhm.
have more time. But yeah, this is the last question. And I think this is really good to make this whole session more well rounded. It's about letters of recommendations from Mirza in Zoom. Do you mind sharing with us, Tita, about your recommendation letters when you applied to Stanford? Can you tell us a bit more about your letter of recommendations, who you got it from, and how you choose your recommenders?
Yeah, so Stanford requires its prospective students to um, to have like three recommendation letters from three different people, right? And so for me personally, I picked my um, undergraduate advisor. Like he was the one who supervised me for my thesis in my undergrad, and then because I know that he knows me very well, he knows how I solve problems related to the research that I worked on for my undergrad, and then he also knows how I like not only just like technical stuff, but he also knows me personally, like how my attitude is and so on and so forth. So that's that. So the second one comes from my mentor at my first job in an oil and gas company. So he's an American and he's very much open. In fact, he shares his experience a lot about studying in the United States because he's American. He used to live there, and then he also did his masters and also his PhD as well in there, master actually only, and then he gave me a lot of like tips and tricks and so on and so forth, and then I requested him to write a recommendation letter for me, and then the other one is the last one is from my mentor, also at the same company. And the reason why I chose him because I've been working with I was working with him for like 3 years, and then I think he knew me pretty well. So yeah, so it doesn't have to be
Yay.
coming from someone who's like a minister or someone who's like a CEO of a company or something like that. You don't have to do that. If that person doesn't know you well, then don't waste your time asking recommendations. So
Totally,
make sure that
totally.
your recommendations is coming from someone who knows you really well, who can
Hmm.
speak
Yeah,
about you to other people.
Someone who knows
yeah.
you very well. Sounds familiar. Or did I say?
That's
Did I say?
your motto, Fina, and our
Yeah.
motto
So yeah.
actually.
So Tita, two
So
nights
yeah, we
ago.
always say that.
Yeah. Yeah, Tita, 2 nights ago, I gave a presentation about letters of recommendation as well. And then I have like a list of the characteristic of the recommenders that we should ask. And the number one is, you know, someone who knows you well. And that's definitely something that I always tell people here because I don't know, Tita, do you realize that I don't know if it's like an Indonesian thing atau ini kayak just like, very common that people here tend to pick a recommender just depending on their status.
Hmm.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. I've heard that a lot of times,
yeah.
and
Is
it's
it
it's
in
I
the US or not, do you think?
was that.
Do you think is it a thing also in the US? Atau kayak American people, they actually understand when it comes to letters of recommendation, it has to come from someone who knows you well,
Mm.
not like the status of that recommender.
I don't think that is the case. I'm not sure if that's specific to Indonesia as well. Maybe that
Okay.
also happens in other countries as well. But I don't think it's very common here in the United States that people pick like super important person to be their
Hmm.
recommenders. So I think they
Okay.
Yeah.
not much people are aware of that, and yeah,
But yeah,
Yeah.
I would like
Mhm.
to think about, letters of recommendation is also something like personal. So if it's like you when you read it, you don't feel like this person don't really know this, the
exactly.
person that he or she is talking about.
Yeah.
So that's like, it sounds really off because it just reflects in the writing. If let's say I'm working as a manager and I'm asking for like the highest level, like the board of directors, to write one of the letters for me, and I only met them once a year for company event.
Yeah.
What are they going to write about me? So that's what I was
Exactly.
always explaining to my advisees, and they like to ask this kind of question. So if I'm applying to Stanford, I know this Stanford alumni, and I ask the letters of recommendation from this alumni, will I get a better chance to be accepted? Well, I always say how well this alumni knows
Person
you.
knows
You know,
exactly. It's always
yeah. Do you
combined
guys
to
work
that.
together? Do you guys
Yeah.
work together or any project together or research together? If none of that is happening between you guys, then what is he or she going to say about you? Even though he or she is the alumni, you know.
Yeah.
Right,
And
right.
and and if and mhm, go ahead, Tita.
No, I was just, I had this person experience is exactly that. So I had one person who was like reaching out to me, and then he was
Mm,
we were talking about like stocks, but then eventually he
I
was
bet.
asking me if he is a recommender, right? And I was,
Hmm.
I barely know you well, and we just never met each other like
Oh my
in
God.
person. So I was
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it doesn't have to be coming from someone who's an alumni of that university. The admission committee doesn't care about it actually. So
Exactly.
if I
Oh
say
yeah,
something like,
yeah.
hey, like I say, hey, this guy is smart, hard worker, and so on and so forth. It's so generic. I mean, the professor, the admission
So
committee,
generic. Yes.
they know that this is okay. This person doesn't know the
Yeah.
prospective students very well, so it's
Yeah.
pretty obvious for them because then they've read like tons of applications, so they know the pattern.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just
No,
keep that in
I was
mind.
actually about to say exactly the same thing. If you actually
Hmm.
really think about it, what makes you think that the admissions committee actually care
Hmm.
about who
Letters of
wrote the letter?
recommendations.
Because
Yeah.
this letter supposedly about you. It's not
True.
about the person. The person is not applying for the master's
Yes.
degree or the PhD. It's about you. So what they're really looking for is the content on how this person can kind of like vouch for you, saying that, man, like, kind of kayak, ini orang keren banget kok. I've worked with this person. I can vouch for this person. He or she will be the one of the best candidate for your campus. That's what they're pretty much like looking for. Not like, I'm the president of
Yeah.
whatever.
So yeah,
Yeah.
it's yeah. Fina totally have a point here. Like it's not who they are that will get you to be accepted or into the university, but it's who you are, and they are vouching for your qualities, your characters. So regardless of who is the recommender, what matters is the content. And another rule of thumb for letters of recommendations, it's a heads up for all of you guys who are trying to apply to US universities, is that they have kayak minimal kayak mereka tuh di atas kamu. Misalnya in the company, if you
Right.
are associate manager, then you can ask your manager. No,
Yeah.
no, nggak bisa yang kayak your fellow coworkers like the same level as you, because they don't have the authority or the power to say something about you, like to supervise you or whatever that is. So
Right.
that's that, right, Tita? And
Mhm.
yeah, I
Yeah.
think that's really
Mhm.
important.
Yeah, so
Okay,
time's up. I really wish we could have more time to, but I still want to
exactly.
stay here and then just like have a chat with Tita. But Tita, I have two questions to kind of like wrap this session up.
Mhm.
What is next for you? Because we definitely want to hear from you about that. And then what can you share? What can you say to us here in Indonesia, to all of us here who are watching you, but kind of people who kind of like sell their self short. That's kind of like the word that I kind of like to use to people young. I'm not gonna get it into Stanford, no way, because I only have like 3.1 GPA and it's Stanford, right? Like, so what can you say to that? Like, to motivate us here back home. So because the way I look at it, and the main reason why we invite you, Tita, just to kind of like say to all of us here that if you can do it, so can us, so can they. Like, Miss Tita.
Yeah. So to the first question, what's next? That question actually caused me an existential crisis. But so I'm super excited because I'm here. I work as a senior data scientist at Tesla, and you've probably heard a lot about the company, right? It's it's growing really fast, and it will be the future in energy. And I'm super excited about you know working on something that is going to revolutionize the world. And I personally believe that one of the biggest problem in this century is climate change. And I know that our work in the oil and gas industry was kind of a little bit contradictory, but now I know that that's a problem, and oil and gas is a problem, and I wanted to work on something that is more sustainable. I know it sounds cliche and corny, but I want to make the world better, and I think this is a great moment for us to kind of transition from like fossil fuel based energy to more of like renewable energy. So I'm super excited. The fact that I'm here at like renewable energy company, at least a company that works on building a sustainable energy, it 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 kind of motivates me further, and I wanted to stay here to develop my expertise, and then I wanted to be an expert in this renewable energy plus data science. And at some point in life, I wanted to go back to Indonesia because Asia is where the growth is in the next maybe 10, 20 years. So I definitely want to contribute myself. I want to develop like countries that are lagging behind in terms of like in terms of energy sustainability. So yeah, that's the plan, at least for me. Hope that happens. And then to your second questions, so what is the message that you want to say? So look, so I I was born and I grew up in Yogyakarta. I was like not even the city. I was living in the suburbs of the city, and I know my grandparent was once a farmer. So and then like so that's his generation. So my grandfather was a farmer, and then the generation after that, so the generation of my father, they're mostly um, teachers, civil servants, PNS, and then also yeah, pegawai negeri, basically, right? And it's a common thing. And then most of them they just wanted to stay in Jogja for a long period of time, and they never thought about let's move to Jakarta, let's move to some other places. Then even more, they don't even think about moving to like United States or some other countries. So there was this mindset like that was passed through generations, and I feel like I wanted to give an example to my relatives that hey, I know that you know we don't have that much privilege by living in the like city, in a small city in the suburbs. And I know what was the case for like our like parents or grandparents. I know they were like poor and so on and so forth, but there are actually a lot of things out there. But by out things is not just outside Jakarta, but outside Indonesia. We can actually compete not only like nationally but also internationally. When I say compete, it sounds very bad, but like what I meant by that is that you can go outside Indonesia, you can go to United States, you can apply to Stanford, you can apply to Harvard. If you want to go there, just do it, right? So and later on I was thinking about not only trying to be an example for my relatives, but I want to be an example for my friends as well, or even more and more people. So I want to show that although I don't have like a lot of privilege back then, I could be there, I could be here, and if I can be here, so do you.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's my last message.
Wow, that's very powerful.
Wow.
That really
Now I
made
wish just to extend this whole session, but
I
we cannot do that. I really am inspired. I mean, I'm one of the advisor, but I'm just like the participants here. I'm so inspired by what you want to do, and I can totally see that you are doing that in the future, that the sustainable energy and everything. And I think that's where the future is as well, because seeing how many advices come to us with the same team, and following kind of like your footsteps. And yeah, I'm convinced that that's the future. And we cannot wait until the day that you come back to Indonesia to, help us improve and make a good improvement in that area.
I will,
So
and I
yeah,
promise.
yeah. So there's a fun hashtag in our chat box like we need more and then Tita for president. Wow. So yeah, Fina, I'll give it back to you to close this amazing session. But before that, I really thank Tita and Fina and everyone here who's watching and making this happen and make it great. And we will see you in our next event, I think next week. Yeah. Okay. Thank you,
Yeah.
Yeah,
everyone. I'll
I'm,
give it back to Fina.
I'm
Thank
glad
you.
to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Tita. I can't can't thank you enough. Thank you so much, Santika, for helping me because I can't do it alone because like the questions are just amazing and we just want to make sure that not none of the questions are overlapping or anything like that. So Santika, really thank you so much for being part of this. Um I'm like I also want to thanks to everyone who is watching this. You guys are amazing. This is one of the best sessions that I've had and definitely, we're going to invite you again, Tita, if you're up for it. Just wait for me until I emailed you and Tita, would you be interested in giving another talk and everything? And so uh, stay tuned, guys. I mentioned in the chat that we like to feature more and more alumni or students or incoming students, especially those who have received funding from the university because yes, we love to talk about scholarships and everything, but just wanted to share with you guys that it is also another funding option available for us for international students that is possible. I know that it's more common to receive this kind of fundings, especially when you are in a STEM field. But I mean, I know someone who received full funding for a law degree for LLM, so it's actually possible. And someone asked earlier in the chat, is there any like this kind of fundings besides Stanford? And I said, of course, right? So you just need to know better about the program and everything. So again, thank you so much, Tita. Thank you so much, Santika. Thank you so much for Edamerica team. Thank you so much for you guys who are watching this session, not only here in Zoom, but so many different platforms. You can definitely rewatch this session again and again and again, or probably share it to your friends on YouTube because this is after this session, it will automatically be in YouTube so you can watch it. So thank you so much. I look forward to seeing you for the essay session next Thursday, and then the discussion session again with current students at Columbia University on the following Saturday. Okay, thank you, and I'm gonna give it back to Maya.
All right, thank you so much, Kak Fina, Kak Santika, and Kak Tita. That was a very insightful session. We hope to see you again next time. Now, the rest of you, please don't go anywhere because earlier in this event, I asked you guys, is it true or false that at Princeton University, every class has a reunion every year? And the right answer is true. 26,000 alumni, family, and friends attend reunions every year. But unfortunately, nobody got the answers right this time, so better luck next time. Now, you may be wondering, how can I develop an awesome idea for a place like this? Easy. You can go to our website at www.atamerica.or.id, click create an event, and collaborate with us. All proposals coming to us will be reviewed and your event might be featured here soon. And while you're on our website, don't forget to subscribe to our newsletters for weekly event updates sent straight to your inbox. Alright everybody, I think that wraps up this episode. It has been really fun, but unfortunately we have to say goodbye for now. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter at ATAmerica for event updates, fun content, and so much more. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. Once again, thank you so much everybody for tuning in. Happy weekend!